Well, thank you, and welcome to everybody this morning, and welcome to, as Joseph said, SMC Australia New Zealand head office and our manufacturing facility here in Castle Hill in the Greater Western Sydney region. Just by way of background, back in 1981, we first acquired 35,000 square metres of land, which is up where Building 1 is. And at that stage, we'd moved from Rydalmere, and I think a lot of people thought we were crazy moving this far out from Rydalmere. There were paddocks and very little else out here. Obviously, over the last 30, 40 years, of course, Sydney's continued to grow. And where we are located now is very much, I think, in a very good location, because able to service all of the manufacturing sector, and certainly in the growing western part of Greater Sydney. In Building 1, we still have our head office, we have engineering, we have our cylinder production, or air cylinder production and bus door manufacturing. We also have our quality division and logistics. Then in 1997, we purchased this particular building, and this used to be actually the sanitarium building before they moved up the coast. And the very area where we are here, they used to actually make peanut butter. Obviously, we've since moved in here. We now have our New South Wales sales office here. We also have our national warehouse and distribution centre. And we also have our control systems division. And also we have a sheet metal company here as well, which is a subsidiary of SMC Australia. So today we occupy 80,000 square metres of land. And we're both a manufacturer as well as a supplier to the manufacturing industry. So I think it's very important that as a manufacturer ourselves, we understand what it's like to be in manufacturing these days. And we're proud to be still manufacturing here in Australia. And I know that that's why many of us are here today too, because we want to continue to keep manufacturing alive throughout Australia. And in many cases, we are very innovative in Australia. A lot of the design that we often may do here these days, unfortunately, some of the production goes offshore. But it's important, I think, and I think the government needs to continue to support manufacturing. And I think as we transition into to the new era of Industry 4.0 and the Internet of Things, it's going to become more and more important. And I think it's great that you can all be here today. Obviously, SMC is very proud to be collaborating with the following 5 companies, all of whom have representatives here today. And that's Balluff, Nord Drivesystems, Beckhoff, Argus, and Universal Robots. Now, the Open IIoT aims to demystify Industry 4.0 and to assist manufacturers who are really looking to implement their own IoT strategies within their own business. All 6 companies, I think, share the same vision for the manufacturing industry in Australia, and that's to really get ahead of the Industry 4.0 curve and to really take the discussion from merely theory into reality and into practice. So each company that's represented here today, they bring their own unique knowledge, experience and expertise in their own segment of the manufacturing industry. And together, as you can see behind you here, you've been looking at this morning, we showcase a real-life demonstration of various IoT technologies working in unison and how these can be best integrated. So today's the second demonstration day that we've held. The first one was on September the 17th in our Melbourne office, and we have another third demonstration day in Brisbane on November the 7th. Now, in the modern era that we're all working in today, we're all time poor, and obviously we're needing to do a lot more with less. I really do sincerely thank you for giving up your time this morning to be here. And I'm sure that with the panel that we have here today, I'm sure you'll go away armed with some very good information and have made some good contacts as well for going forward. So I certainly welcome you this morning. And I'll now hand you back to Joseph, who will MC with the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you very much for that. So, very good overview from Wayne. Just as very much like Wayne said, I'd just like to take another opportunity to thank you all for investing the time to be here. So we all have very busy schedules as well. So we understand how important time is. So we hope you get a lot of value out of this. And for that very reason, we would like to invite you into the conversation. So rather than actually just putting up topics and presenting to you, we are more interested is, what you would like to discuss. What solutions would you like to see? How do you see Industry 4? Where do you want us to demystify, as Wayne said before, any areas with our experts on our panel with, from various industries, various different levels of participation in Industry 4 contribution as well. So I'll just quickly bring your attention to the screen over there. There's a mobile number up there on that screen. So what we're actually doing in this session here is inviting you to send a question if you have one during the session. So we've got about an hour approximately to run the panel discussion. As well, if you have any questions that you may want to add to a question that we might pose up here, or you would like something clarified, or you have a separate question that's of a particular interest to you, please feel free to text it through. I've got my phone up here, so I'll have a look at a question and we'll throw that question up to the panel as well, and we'll have a conversation around it and see if we can demystify that as well. So just quickly before we get into it, I'll just introduce the panel. So on the far right, we have Yusuf Salim from representing Beckhoff Automation, Ian Chu from Universal Robots, Max from Nord Drivesystems, and also Jim from Balluff Systems as well. So, and myself from SMC. And we might start the conversation, gentlemen. All your mics are working and everybody's ready, so let's start with our opening question as well. So generally, the opening question always seems to be the most important one as well. We start off. So the $1 million question to the panel is, what's in it for me and why should I implement Industry 4? So it's just like Industry 4 itself, it's a very broad and generic question. And it's not a standard as we know, it's a concept. So let's try to focus that into an answer if we can. So do you want to start, Yusuf?
Sure, no problems at all. It is a multi-million-dollar question as to what is in it for me. So until and unless you know what you are trying to achieve from it, it's of no use kind of thing. So especially if looking at from a business management perspective, or if I'm a business owner, right? The question that always pops in the mind is, for example, like how can I increase in what? Increase in, for example, how can I increase my productivity? How can I increase my sales? How can I increase my profit, right? On the other hand, how can I reduce in, for example, reduction in costs? How can I be a bit more profitable? How can I reduce my resources so that I don't have so many assets to manage? How can I, as Wayne said in the intro, that how can we do more with less effort, right? So from a business perspective, this is very, very key focus. So that's a very, very key question. Say, what is in it for me? So it answers, it's a question itself that gets raised quite a lot. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Yusuf. Ian?
So generally, like what Yusuf is saying, to me, it's really like a results scorecard for automation projects. Because of all the data that we're getting through, is it really producing as we expect it to be? Those kind of measurements, statistics that we can get out of automation projects. And I think that sort of gives a a background and that sort of data to then take this as a tool to then make decisions about automation projects, right? So we've gone about automation projects, putting in new machines and whether they're producing as they should be, or do we find anything else in there? I think that's a very useful tool if you could link this up with this kind of facility. There's also the other thing as well where you can kind of link up, machines that run themselves. You kind of have an operator that kind of manages maybe one or a few, and you don't necessarily have the opportunity to stand there and watch the machine the whole time. So one of the things that's capable as well with IIoT is that when machines experience stoppages or completions, you can have prompts that get sent to operators that they can then address those kind of things, whereas traditionally we've resorted to things like buzzers and light stacks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a valid point there, Ian, as well. Max, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. So from our side, it depends a bit where you are at. So if you are an OEM, it can give you added value to your customers because you can upgrade the features you sell to the end users and the knowledge and the features of the machine. If you're an end user, it can give you less downtime, added safety, can give you more knowledge about your processes, and it can give you easy fixes and easy KPIs within maybe a running system if you're just updating and not doing a greenfield investment. So it all comes down like at which point or which place in the supply chain you are and what's your expectations of IoT. Because in the end, it's opening up, it's connecting your machinery, your existing one, or it's your upgraded machinery, connecting it to the internet and giving you data out of it. And the data you, as a user, would have to define what kind of data you want and what you want to do with it. And I think that's the point where we need to discuss with you and where we as an IoT group are what we are here for today, to show you what's possible. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Max. Yep. Jim?
Yeah, I think in Australia we need to be flexible and efficient about our automation and manufacturing, and the Industry 4.0 concepts, starting from lean concepts, that allows us to get that extra efficiency. For me, it's about making a series of informed decisions on a daily, hourly basis, and we're generating the information about the process, from the process and from external factors that correlate with the information from the process. And with that information, we can then start to become more efficient and all the benefits that were mentioned before.
But just a quick one as well. So great answers there as well. So another question that I'm asking here is, so would it be more of a subjective experience? So if you're looking at, so everybody's process is different. Everybody has a different need. So where do we start? Like when you're looking to connecting the value with, which concept do we draw onto, what's the outcome that's required? How do you make that connection?
I think that Yusuf, his opening point was sometimes you need to know what you need to know. What we're seeing a lot is that people are asking just for some visibility of the process. Is the machine running or not? And real simple starting points for visibility. And that's your starting point, I think, in most cases.
When you say visibility, Jim, just to extrapolate on that a little bit, what do you mean define visibility?
Yeah, so a lot of the time, the information is being generated in the machine. There's a lot of information in the PLC, but actually extracting that into something that we can all understand on a dashboard, so similar to what we've got on the dashboard down there, sometimes that's a problem. And I think that's a starting point. Basically, what do you want to know? And keep it simple at the start. What do we need to know? Once we can see, if it's something as simple as how many hours a day is the process running, let's start with that. Once we implement that, and then we go to the next step. Okay, why was the process stopped, for instance?
Yeah, and I think throughout the process, you generally tend to learn quite a lot about your own systems that you didn't know. You get an insight into the part of the machinery or the process, and you generally generate a profile which paints a reasonably detailed picture of how your machine runs, where the efficiencies or inefficiencies lie. So what we do is we start identifying the traps or the pain points in there, so we have a reasonable starting point in improvement as well. So, yeah, good answers, thank you. So we have our first question that's come in from the audience, and the question is, I'll just read it out. So, security. How does a company secure its data if it's in the cloud? So there's a couple of questions in the one. And are there certified systems that are able to be implemented? Yusuf, did you want to start with that one?
Sure, no problem at all. I'm sitting in the wrong position, I guess.
We'll reverse, we'll go backwards and forwards. So.
Not a problem. Yeah, no, it's a very good question, and I was waiting for it to come through. And it's one of the most asked questions out there. When it comes to the clouds and data sharing and everything, people do think as to, what about my data security? My data is not secure then because I'm sharing the amount of data that I only wanted to know while someone else wants to know, right? That is where all the cyber security exercises do come into play, and that is where you will have all those sort of security layers and layers that have been placed to look after that sort of things. However, there is no need for you to share your data if you don't want to, right? For example, just to give you an idea, as Jim was mentioning, you need to understand your processes, right? So if you know what you're trying to do, for example, and it could be that you don't have to go using cloud services, you can take advantage of this IoT phenomena just looking at, for example, looking at the machine itself, right? So there are different angles as to where you can tackle the security question, right? So there are a lot of security layers into place. For example, again, talking on behalf of Beckhoff, because we have a lot of TwinCat products, a lot of software products that do communicate via cloud services through MQTT services or Amazon Web Services, right? So the security has been into place so that no one can hack into your data, so no one has the accessibility to what you, so what other wants to know or what you are trying to share into the cloud services. So yeah.
Thanks, Yusuf.
I suppose for us, the UR Plus is like an app store for universal robots, containing all kinds of things that is used together with the robots, things like end effectors and cameras, and one of it is softwares. We got quite a few of these, so there are other manufacturers that come up with products that integrate into our robots, and we've got a few of the IoT products in there as well. And in conversations with them, it's also some kind of the same thing that they've come through, is that they get this kind of security questions and privacy. It's data that they own, and they want to. They started off with a product that where you would, as you purchase the product, it links up the robot to a remote server, and typically run by the vendors themselves. And you would get some sort of like a login credential where you log in, and then you can check your robot's productivity and that kind of thing. And that's one of the things that they started to realize, is that customers want to have control over that. And so that we're starting to see a little bit of shift for these UR Plus products related to IoT, where they start to come up with products that you can house servers in-house rather than a remote server. So you can have control over where that goes to, and it then, the question about security then starts to fall on internally within the company itself, how you manage your IT security, and you do have a little bit more control over that as well.
Thanks, Ian. Max, did you want to?
For Nord, since we are a component supplier, we decided not to offer a cloud service or to go into this direction. So we basically outsource this to our partners, since we only deliver the data, the raw data. But to answer the question regarding security, I think over the last 5 years, almost all other services around the factory already moved into the cloud. So our CRM system is in the cloud, our email system is in the cloud, even our SAP system is now in the cloud. So basically, your data mostly is already in the cloud, because I still remember 10 years ago, I had to change the magnetic storage devices in our local servers, and sometimes they would be, after the storage place would be full, so we would be storing them somewhere in a drawer. I don't think that was much safer than an encrypted server cloud facility today. So just from my experience, we're already giving up our data in private life and company life. It's just another step to agree that this production data should be in a cloud, because the only option not to have it in a cloud is not having it accessible. So, and we can help you from Nord, we can help you to access this data, we have it available, but we would give it to another company to take care of it, because they are the ones who have the standards of encryption and the standards of safety, and most of them are highly certified. Thanks.
That's a good point, Max, as well. Just on that one as well, Max highlighting, obviously, the expertise in every field, which is why, for one of the reasons, Industry 4, as described by Klaus Schwab in his first published book that heads up the World Economic Forum as well, on Industry 4, it's about collaboration. So it's about sharing the knowledge, and it's about collaboration, which is why we have the 6 partners over here demonstrating the abilities, and obviously the seamless integration with all or not only product, but the collaboration that we have here of sharing ideas. So it's really just not about just the technology, it's about leveraging of technology, and it's about putting the experts in the right place.
Yeah, and at the last event down in Melbourne, similar question was asked, and Richard from Xiags, who's not here today, but he gave a really good answer, that when we're talking about data centers, he made the analogy with a plane crash, that statistically plane travel's by far the safest way to travel. It's far less likely to have the accident. Okay, everybody hears about it when it happens, but it's the same with the data centers. The data centers. That's where the security is at its highest level, its highest levels of encryption. Sure, you can keep the data in your own facility, there's then other issues about your own firewall and maintaining that. One of the other things that I think worth mentioning is it also depends on the scale of what you're doing with the IoT. So you can have a very simple connected system. For instance, it might be that we're just monitoring a level of coolant, and when it drops to a certain level, we connect by sending an email to the supplier that drops it off. Are we really, why are we worried about the data security in that instance? So something very, very simple is perhaps not such an issue. Okay, when you're monitoring what's going on in your whole factory and the machine and who owns that data, then it becomes more of an issue. But we can break it down to different levels anyway.
Thank you, Jim. So we'll just quickly move on. I've received a flood of questions, which is amazing. So I'll just move on to our next question, which is very relevant and a fantastic question. For a small company, what, in your opinion, is the easiest and cheapest first steps to explore the value of Industry 4 technologies? Maybe we'll start with Jim.
Oh, I was trying to the lead here today.
For me, the first thing I'd say is try and keep it simple. So work on a small application, a small pain point. So examples that we've looked at in the past were, how efficient is my machine? How many hours a day does the machine run for? If the machine stopped, what are the reasons for it being stopped? Is it a planned change over time, etc.? You can start to build up a picture of the process. It might be, as I mentioned, in our own production facility over in Germany, we have some really simple integrations like is the level of coolant dropped to a certain level? We automatically ask the guy to come and deliver some more coolant. We do the same in our dispatch where we're monitoring levels of the cardboard boxes. Drops below a certain level. Nobody has to place an order on the supplier. He turns up with the correct boxes at the correct time. In that example, the supplier said, wow, this is great. Can I give this to my other customers? So he's completely changed his business model by having just a few sensors on his customers' warehouses that monitor the levels of the product that he's supplying, and he can make that change. So something like that can be a really easy starting point. That's really aimed at an end user, I guess. If we're looking at from a machine builder perspective, it's a slightly different conversation. And obviously, if it's a greenfield site and we're building a whole new facility, then it's a different entry level to the conversation.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, just from my customer experience right now, the first step mostly is visualization. So actually, that's one step back because that's Industry 3.0. But if you're honest, many customers are not even there. So they have like maintenance planning according to operation hours, according of our very vague manuals. Like, okay, every 20,000 hours you have to change the oil. Nobody knows when the 20,000 hours start or end. So basically they do 2 years maintenance schedules or whatever they feel like. So the first step really would be like maybe a simple signaling next to the gearbox, and the gearbox has an integrated time counter, like how many hours I'm really operating. And then the second step, if you're already there, then starts in Industry 4.0, where we have algorithms calculating, okay, when would be the downtime according to your usage today. So after 1 year, it would tell you, okay, your current usage with your motor current, oil temperature, and overload gives us the idea that in exactly 7 months, you should maintain that gearbox from Nord perspectives now. So it depends very much where are you right now in the process of digitalization and KPIs, and where you want to go. So, but from I think 90% of our customers, they haven't done the condition monitoring yet, which is Industry 3.0. And from there, once we have the conditions, you can start putting the smart into it and define what you want to do with these values.
I've got one. Yep.
Thanks, Max.
I suppose for UR, we have that UR Plus platform where there's already ready-made solutions for IoT, and I think this is one of the suggestions that I typically give for people just sort of starting to explore in this sort of area. Try to find something that's already out in the market that you can already. The whole idea around UR Plus is that somebody that doesn't have prior experience can then get the solution. Comes with a whole manual that's step-by-step that teaches you how to install the whole software plugin into the robots and already start the data tracking. So there are already ready-made solutions out there. both with the capability for data logging and operator prompting for any stoppages or completions, that kind of thing. So those kind of things are already out there. And I think for smaller businesses and people that are starting off, that's one of the best places to make the problem a little bit smaller than what it should be. So yeah, just finding ready-made solutions out there.
Sure.
Thanks, Ian.
To add to that, actually, keep it simple. You don't need to start with a very complex application. Keep it simple. Know your processes well as to what you want to achieve, what your data is. Just to back it up with an example with a project I just very recently did. So there was a customer was having machine failure because of the power discrepancies they were having because of the power supplies. So what they did, they just had a power measurement tool, and they added a couple of function blocks to their software program, and on their mobile device, they were able to do the power monitoring on the machine. So again, it can get as simple as this. So like a very simple application, and they implemented this very swiftly, and they were able to monitor the power usage of the machine. They will monitor if there are any spikes on an historian level, and get them going. And it has been implemented. It is as easy as it gets. Yeah.
So basically, I think the overall thread of the consistency I've got is we'll start simple.
Yep.
So we pick one outcome or two at the most, and we isolate one machine or one production line or one part of the process, and we work on that, achieve the outcome, then we move to the next one. Generally, what we've found in most cases is once you do actually start the process, you start going through it, you actually get pleasantly surprised what you discover during a process that you never knew before as well. So had that a few times.
Yeah, also I think at that point you need some discipline, because we've all been in meetings where we sit around the table, and the customer will say, well, if I can use it here, then I can also use it here. And I've just thought I can use it here and here, and before we know
it's very easy to digress from the process. Yeah. So it's about obviously having smart goals, achievable goals, a plan in place, and one step at a time. Fantastic. So a lot of great questions coming through. So what we might do is I'll just kindly ask the panel to just go through as quickly as possible.
Sure.
Just so we can, I will just make sure that we get to answer every question that's come through, and there's quite a lot coming through at the moment. So next question is, how can we improve production quality with IoT, double IoT, and can we improve sales with double IoT? Yusuf.
Right. Yes, again, starting from the previous question again, you need to understand your processes first, right? So as long as you know what you're trying to achieve, right, this can be profitable, for example, income for you. It can, so if it doesn't increase your sales, at least it will reduce your costs, for example, for your labor cost. Again, as the example I gave, so they were having some few power failure issues, and they were causing a lot of damage to their machine. So by just implementing a small IoT concept into their program, they were able to manage their machine well and do the power monitoring, and they didn't have any failures afterwards. So it's a small example, but does go a long way.
Yeah, and really it's that traceability that you get out of those data. So linking up your finding, I suppose, when it comes to sales and quality, that kind of thing, you need to find what's really relevant to that production process directly. And being able to extract that from the streams of data that's coming through from the machine is really what we're looking for here to get that kind of visibility.
Yeah, to answer this short, as an OEM, you can increase sales by adding services, because IoT requires services and knowledge, and you would have to generate this service, so that's an added value. And as an end user, you definitely can increase the quality of your production, because you have much more overview, and you basically take out all the blind spots. So you know exactly what's happened at your production, at what time and what speed, or whatever other data you request. So yes, you can do that.
Yeah, and given that visibility, you can make those small adjustments to improve the quality, improve the efficiencies.
Yeah. So basically, I think, there was twofold question in there as well. So, I mean, how do we improve the manufacturing process? How does the improvement in the manufacturing process affect the sales? Have we been able to make that connection anywhere there? And how would you see that going?
I think most of our customers, they're very lead time driven. So, and to reduce downtime, I think is a big fact, because you can reduce or you can plan your downtime, which to like anyway a holiday, vacation time or whatever, and keep the peak season free of this kind of incidents.
Yeah. So I'm guessing, I dare say, it would have something to do learning about obviously how much capacity each production line has, and knowing, you may have instances of like 2 or 3 of the same production lines that are producing exactly the same thing, but at a different rate. And you may be wondering why, which previously you didn't know why. But if we generate that data profile of that machine, we start having a reasonably detailed picture or story of how that machine performs, and hopefully why. So I guess from my personal experience, understanding how that affects the sales process is obviously understanding the throughput of what you're able to deliver for start as well. So you can obviously plan your distribution or your stock levels in your distribution warehouses accordingly as well. So we start connecting right down from the beginning, and then you can also schedule, if you know how much material you use, right down to the last grain of plastic that you're injection molding or extruding, or, or a particular chemical that you use to produce what you do produce. You can start obviously more efficiently scheduling the orders from your suppliers as well. So now we're sort of going to that broader, but it does start with that simple data collection of knowing what's happening in this part of the process, doesn't it?
Yeah, and those increases in efficiency obviously reduce...
Well, efficiencies, yeah.
It reduces the manufacturing cost and obviously has an effect on the sales price and lead times, etc.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Next question. Well, this is an interesting one. So they say there is no Industry 4 without OPCUA. Can you give your thoughts on this and explain why this is? Jim.
So in the demonstration we've got here, the OPCUA is the machine-to-machine communication, and what we're actually doing on this setup is that all of the data coming back from the sensors, the pneumatics, the drives, that's all going through OPCUA tags, and the PLCs acting as an OPCUA server. So yeah, in this case, everything is going through OPCUA. In our experience at Balluff, on smaller scale, we can actually use some of the information. OPCUA is a really, really good way of transferring that information and marrying up all those different systems. But in some cases, you can come directly to, for instance, you can go directly to the sensors through a web address and bring out data in JSON formats or various different formats. So whilst OPCUA is probably the most widely used, I don't think it's 100% critical. It depends on the application, but certainly for if we're looking at monitoring multiple lines, multiple machines, controllers, etc., OPCUA is really, really useful.
Yeah, I have to agree to that, because in the end it depends on the scale of your operation and how much code you want to put into each unit. So if you have only one, let's say you have a pump operating somewhere as a single system, you can make that pump smart without a PCUA, so you can use the internal PLC and the inverter. But if you have a whole, for example, baggage handling system, you don't want to program every inverter, then you want to have a higher unit taking care of the whole process and giving signals to the inverter. So it depends on the scale of your operation, yes. But since Industry 4.0 is about putting intelligence and internet availability in every component, so basically you can access every component and use it as a smart device.
Yeah, and there's still quite a bit of differences between each manufacturers and what each one uses. And I think really in terms of scalability for IoT, that's one of the things that we all have to come together and really decide on what really is something that everyone can use altogether and not have so many of the different options, which is what I feel like it's currently still at the moment.
Sure. No, I totally agree with what the comments have been made so far. Even though it does sound like that OPCUA is the key element of an Industry 4.0 concept, right? But again, it all depends on the application and all depends on the project you're working on, right? You may need it or you may not need it. For example, as Jim said, that machine that you see here, this is using OPCUA, but at the same time, you will also have smart sensors that are out there, or smart pumps, as Max was saying, that will allow you to do all that interconnectivity within the systems on a local machine rather than going through the OPCUA channel. So yeah, again, it all depends on the project and the application we are discussing.
Thanks, panel. Well, that's an interesting question. I do actually, I like this question because it actually makes me want to answer it with another question, which is, what is Industry 4? I guess, I mean, the question itself almost tries to, I think, isolate or put Industry 4, as so many of us desperately try to do. We try to define things so we can understand it better and so we can process it. So we try to put it in a category or in a certain box where it belongs. That way we define it a lot clearer. Where I think a lot of, part of that, a lot of the questions come from that place is really trying to define the Industry 4 itself. So being a concept in itself is, I think really it calls for that new approach towards problem solving. So it's not really a particular object. It's not really a piece of software. It's not really OPC unified architecture, which all it's really doing is creating a mutual platform to capture data and pass it through. I think where it really comes from is, how do we approach old problems with a new mindset? How do we not just do a lot more of the old stuff and do it a lot faster, but how do we do it better? And how do we leverage of the resources around us to do that better? I mean, 20 years ago, the conversations that I generally have almost on a daily basis is, well, we've had diagnostics for 20 years. Yeah, but have you ever used them? That's the question. But then that's not really the right answer, because why haven't you used them? Because I speak daily with people who are way smarter than I am, and they know a lot more than I'll ever will know. But the point is that we never had 4G internet until today. We're on the cusp of 5G internet, and so how could you possibly run a machine remotely on dial-up internet? It just wasn't feasible. But we have the resources now. We have the technology in place now to be able to do that. So it comes back down to the ecosystems, doesn't it? So it's about creating that eco-structural ecosystem that supports an Industry 4 type manufacturing facility, that supports an Industry 4 type approach, where that goes from, if it's a greenfield site, it's probably an easier approach. Or if it's an existing site, doesn't mean you have to scrap all the machinery, throw it out. It means you just need to take a more systematic approach to upgrading the machinery. So the OPCUA that's one resource that we have to draw on if we need it. There's other ways to access that data, but it depends on what you're trying to achieve, which is where I think this starts, this is how we can help you craft and implement a solution, but that starts with us understanding what your problem is and what do we need to draw on to create that solution. So that was a really good question, so thank you for that. Next one. What are the typical return on investment and payback numbers for a typical production dashboard? Oh, I'm not sure if we can isolate right down to figures. That would be probably potentially creative, I would say, or being obviously a subjective process and very centric around the particular process or the improvement that's desired in there. But I might ask that panel is, have we had, from your experience, what's the typical ROI or return on investment, and are we able to put, let's say, a percentage figure on that?
I'll start if you want. Okay, sure.
Yusuf can start.
Yeah, sure.
Why not?
That's right. Yeah, no, it's a very good question, and again, it's hard to answer in terms of, it can be application specific or project specific, right, as to what you want to achieve. But in terms of return on investment, just to give you an idea, for example, it can increase the efficiency of a system, right? Which in itself can be a return on investment for a particular product, for example, right? For example, if you have got, like just to give you an idea, again, machine condition monitoring, for example, right? So you've got accelerometer sensors on your machine that can give you a predictive analysis on a particular machine, right? Again, if you can save your machine from breaking down at critical time of the year, right? For example, let's say December, and you want to manufacture something on a continuous basis, so that condition monitoring can give you that edge of knowing what the machine is capable of producing right now, right? So I believe this in itself is a return on investment on the machine.
Yeah,
Thanks, Yusuf.
and really knowing from there that
Exactly
that's
right.
probably the next step there, that improvement on the machine itself that really then justifies. And from there, the gains of that improvement, I suppose, is where you would be looking for to take a measurements of what your ROI would be. But I suppose in some other cases where you have, automating some of that, ordering process that we talked about before, that in itself, you might be saving one person of doing that or a few persons' job. In that way, an ROI would be much more direct when you're replacing a person.
Yes,
Yeah, it's really hard to put a figure on it, but talking to a lot of maintenance engineers, because sometimes we sell a $500 component and the person maintaining it, sometimes it's like a $80 to $100 hourly rate. So that's why it comes down to your business, and can't really judge it. I can't give it a figure, sorry.
Yeah, I think as Max said, it's very difficult for individual cases. Maybe one or two examples. For instance, we've done a couple of projects recently around predictive maintenance of injection molding tool and press tooling, where with different customers, there's different elements of the ROI. So with one particular customer, they were collecting a lot of information about the tool usage manually on a spreadsheet, and it was taking one person at least an hour every day to collect this information. That's now all digitized, and it's all automatically collated, and maintenance schedules are predicted going forwards. So you've got a very easy ROI calculation there just in the time. In another application, very similar, it's really about, in the past, some products have been, some scraps been manufactured because tooling wasn't correctly maintained. And they had lots of checks in place to check if the consequence of having incorrectly maintained tooling had happened, so vision systems, etc. And that's kind of parking the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. That's really saying, let's pick up on the mistakes, whereas going backwards to have that predictive maintenance schedule on the tooling itself allows you that's not going to happen. So really that's a very difficult one, but there was one case where some of these products went through the system, made it to the customer, and there we were talking about probably millions of dollars worth of return products and loss in goodwill, whereas maybe a $10,000-$15,000 investment in the IoT solution at the start. So it's very, very quick payback for that.
Thanks, Jim. I might just very quickly, on that note, I've invited a colleague of mine, Bill Bly, who's got a tremendous amount of experience in compressed air efficiencies and improvements. And speaking about figures and percentages, and there's probably no better person here to give a 2-minute overview just to finish off that question, and then I'll pass it over to Bob, who's got a question for Max.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you. What we've been talking about today is making business more efficient. And for all the managers of business and the owners of businesses, whether they be small or large, that's all about the bottom line. It's never been so much, or it's never been as relevant as the times we're going through at the moment. Some of the activity that we've been doing both here and internationally is focusing on saving energy. And that's what we're talking about here. It's utilisation of machinery. It's about using the amount of energy you need and no more. Making sure that that doesn't create issues with production. We still want the operational efficiencies out of the machines. But it's all about getting data. Data is gold. I've been doing a lot on energy saving over the last 10, 15 years. And in more recent times, we're reaping some huge rewards. With one international customer we're working with at the moment, globally, the savings for them from the projects that we've just carried out is 1.7 million euro a year. So it's significant. People are really pricking their ears. CFOs are rubbing their hands together. And obviously there's a lot of new boats getting around. But without the availability of the data, without the type of dashboard configurations that we're doing here, and we're actually doing one that I'll be presenting in England next week. So we are in some ways at the leading edge here in Australia of some of this energy-saving technology. And the reason for that is that being a smaller country, we tend to collaborate more with our end user, and we use our OEMs and integrator partners to help us. There's no jealousy involved. You can see today this is totally collaborative. It's open forum. We're sharing customers, we're sharing ideas, and we're sharing technology. And we're doing that for the common good. It's to make our businesses sustainable. It's to improve our bottom line. And it doesn't matter if it's energy saving, it's production, it's all about the bottom line, okay? So there's some enormous value to come out of this that is underpinned by a system that is configurable to the nth degree. So I've asked Joseph and the colleagues here to reconfigure this, and we're taking data off this platform that we'll be presenting in England next week. Why? Because it hasn't been presented. And it's all about savings, it's all about efficiencies, but more importantly, it only came to this, I guess, this forum and these forums that we're having because there's trust and collaboration. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Bill. I'll just pass it over to Bob, who's got a question for Max.
Thank you, Joseph. Max, I've got a question here. Sorry, my accent is a little bit different from Aussie accent.
It's okay, mine is very German.
To be clear, because from all your answers, I think you're the right person to ask this question here. So what makes you different, guys, from the other ones? Because this technology is known already by a few years more. And so you obviously organize this group of strong companies. So I still didn't get this message. So what is your leading edge for why you have to use your stuff? Because I'm using this for last, let's say, 30 years, and this new technology for last, 20 years. And I still don't see why I have to use you. I use Beckhoff. I know very well your product. Obviously, my customer for many years is SMC. And we still cannot really integrate properly, even positioning valves to provide diagnostics. And especially in industries like our industry, where it's very dirty, it's hard, and it's a fiber cement industry. So what is your leading edge? What you offer better than others? Because I'm using a lot of these big companies, and obviously I don't see any IT type like Cisco partner or others, because you cannot get away with only this stuff. You need to have a complete design. So are you providing only part of the whole solution, or you just providing the total solution for this? Thank you.
That's a very complex question. Thank you for that. I have to say, you're right. We are Open IIoT Group, and I think what you are referring to is the open. So currently, we are also, I think the IoT Group is now open for a bit more than 1 year, right? Because I'm new to this country, I'm 2 months here. So, but regarding Nord, we are only one part of this IoT Group and one part of your future machines. And we are also actively thinking about extending the group, finding other partners in the group, but also you're asking why you should choose Nord, yeah? I would turn this question back, why you should cooperate with the Open IIoT Group and why you are here today, is because we decided to not, me as Nord, we decided not to go to you ourselves and say, that's the better gearbox because it's blue, No, we said we come as a group and we use the knowledge of Balluff, we use the knowledge of Beckhoff and our other partners to give you a system approach. And of course we can't cover everything up to the Cisco system, or as I said, we are not expert for the cloud system, because that would be also not good for you if we would define everything for you. But every member of our companies in the IoT group has a special expertise, and what we are doing is we are investing our time and also the time of our engineers and sales to understand each other's solution and then give you an optimized solution. So that's the further goal. That and of course there are other companies offering, we all have competitors, right? But they might not go this unique approach, and they might not partner with a Balluff and say, okay, that's, this solution gives you the best of Nord, but their Nord has a weakness, but maybe this weakness can be compensated by a Balluff device or by a Beckhoff PLC, and together you have a very smooth and proven system. And furthermore, we give you the opportunity, we have, talking about Nord, we have 30,000 customers globally, so we have a lot of expertise from this already solutions and applications which work, and we can give it back to the group and discuss, okay, here we were operating with you very nicely, why can't we use this at this customer? So it's more like a consulting or integrator approach, but yes, we can't cover the full range yet, but we are discussing how to enlarge this group in the future. I hope this was not too general for you, but this is how, yeah, for a detailed question, I think we would have to meet up and take some hours. Thanks.
Yeah. Is that okay, Bob? Good answer? Yep, no problem. So I think it's a very fair question, actually, and I mean, just to add to that, and I'm glad you asked that question, Bob, as well, in many ways, which is, and I think Max pointed out to the fact it's Open IoT. So this is not a proposal for a fixed solution by all means, which is why it's called Open, Industrial IoT. So in that sense, is we've opened this forum here with the word called collaboration as well. So for that reason is because, Industry 4, it's not just about a technology, like we said, it's about, leading with the ideas and not just with, specific brand names or with specific technologies. So it's about drawing on the right concept and the right technology for the right application, which is why it becomes a very subjective experience. So we would have to understand, or if one takes on a particular approach, says this is what I would like to see out of this, in this type of improvements, whether it's saving compressed air with Bill's team, or whether it might be improving the throughput on a machine or reducing downtime. That's a very different approach in all three of those. So we need to look at what's the right enablers that we need to use to create those outcomes. So, good question. So next question we have on our text message. Can you provide a local example of manufacturer or process using IoT? Jim, did you want to start with that one?
Yeah. So one example that I referred to earlier on, a really nice, simple system, really, which is a press tool or mold tool maintenance predictive. So in this instance, we basically from historical data, each tool, we load some data to that tool to say how many cycles on the press or the injection molding do we expect to be able to run before we have to maintain the tooling. And without making any changes to the control of the machine, we've got kind of like a bolt-on system that using a combination of sensors, RFID, and Ethernet connection. Basically, we can track the usage of the tooling based on the number of cycles. So that's indicated to the operator locally, but also on a dashboard, so that you can look at around the factory which tools are in use, which tools are idle, which are on which machines. Based on the usage and the cycle time, we can then calculate when the maintenance time may be due, and that's a dynamic calculation. So that's very easy then to plan into your maintenance schedule. So essentially, for me, the clever thing about this system is it's an Internet of Things application. It's very simple. It's just looking at a number of cycle counts and then the information on the RFID tag. But because we have that connection out into the Ethernet and we can dashboard this, you can see this on your mobile phone device, at a laptop, and also the operator can see the information locally. So it then means that we've got very efficient cycling. It also builds a lot of security into the system. So for instance, if some tooling is ready for maintenance but hasn't been maintained and somehow finds its way back onto the machine, the operator's prompted with that straight away. The supervisor may get a text message or an email to say that this is the case. So it really helps with all those efficiencies and those increased security in the system, so that we're not having the risk of producing scrap in the system.
Okay, there are a couple of examples I can think of. One I already have shared before. It was about power monitoring. In addition to that, there's one project that I'm personally working on. It's still in prototype phase. So it's about improving the efficiency of a vending machine, for example. So you go to a supermarket or you go to a shopping center and you will see a vending machine where you will have, for example, Smith's salt and vinegar and all these different packet of chips there. So the concept behind this is to optimize the overall efficiency. So what will happen, there will be smart devices into this vending machine, which will know as soon as the stock is low on a particular item. So for example, if it is salt and vinegar or sea salt flavor is down on in quantity, so it will automatically send the message to the manufacturing plant that, hang on, I am getting low here, I need to be replenished ASAP, right? And the manufacturing plant will automatically organize, and this is all machine, it's part of machine learning. So, and the machine will automatically dispatch that particular flavor or that particular thing. So it's still in prototype. I can't talk more about this, but this is an example that we're currently working on within this Industry 4.0 manufacturing space.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Yusuf.
The example that I have is probably one that could have really benefited for something like that. It's a system where it does like a sort of cleaning for some of their tools, and it's the whole cell is put out in the back shed where no one really works in a close proximity around those areas. And the machine runs for a certain amount of time depending on how much tooling they put through the system. And what they've had to try to do is sort of run, buzzers and lights up to the insides of the manufacturing area, just so the operator can see whether the machines has stopped or has it completed its job and that kind of thing. So what they were having a lot was sort of stoppages, or either the machine has completed its job, but operators were not aware, so because nobody was near the machines where they were running. So something like with the integration of IoT capabilities, you could have sort of prompts to operators that tells you whether something's gone wrong or whether it's already completed its job. That takes that limitation of having to be physically close to the machine or have that sort of direct visual of the machines or the signals that's being run more traditionally, where you can get this sort of remote access and direct messages sent to your mobile device that's typically on us most of the time. Then you can address those stoppages much more quickly. And that saves a lot of downtime on the machines because you can react to them as they come.
Excellent. Max, did you want to add something to that as well?
To come up with a very simple application we have done for a pump supplier. So basically it's detecting the motor current, which is equal to the torque. And if there's a blockage, the pump will stop, and then there's just a very simple code. So it tries to go backwards 3 times and tries again. And meanwhile, it gives a warning to the PLC. And after the 3 times, it will stop and give a maintenance request. So these kind of very simple applications can be programmed in our inverters.
So I might just add one very quickly to that as well, that I've personally been involved in down in Melbourne. Unfortunately, I can't name the customers, obviously, for reasons of privacy. But I am able to talk about technology. So we did actually focus on a machine, about the efficiencies of the machine and the throughput. So, and the way we've achieved that And the easiest way we could achieve that was actually just to reduce the downtime of the machine. And the way we've done that was identifying where the problem areas were by obviously doing a little bit of data interpretation across that machine and adding a few points of interest that, once we've done the first initial assessment, once we've implemented the enablers in there, which were smart actuator servo drives on the machine, what we did with that data, we not only knew when the machine was going to jam or when the machine was going to potentially stop, we could actually use that data to close the loop back into the machine and make the dynamic adjustments on the go. So once we started doing that, the customer was actually a pleasant byproduct of that process was they were able to introduce another 4 different products through that machine, which they never physically could put through the machine because they had to adjust it perfectly to only suit one particular product that they were packaging. So what we've done basically eliminated majority of the downtime, and the machine went from producing 4,500 packages per day to 7,500 packages per day. And I mean, the pleasant part of that was the machine was not running any faster, was still running at 50% speed. So there's still 50% capacity left in that machine. So that's one straight off the top of my head that was very recently done. So next question. This is a good one. I think Yusuf might want to start with this one. Has any machine learning algorithm been used in recent IIoT projects? Well, I think Beckhoff have unveiled something at the last Hanover Fair in Germany that Yusuf might want to tell us about.
Sure, no problems at all. So the one that we have been doing is the automatic speech recognition, for example. We call it ASR. So what you do, basically, you will talk to the machine and it will do that particular task for you. So it doesn't need to be, for example, in English. You can select different languages, right? And it basically works behind the scene on all the algorithms that have been written to understand that particular dialect and can act on that particular task. So this is one of the machine learning examples that we've been working on. The other one is vision as well, which I can't go too much into details. It's not announced yet, but there has been a lot of work happening in machine learning. And to add to that, as I was saying about the vending machine application that we've been working on, it's still in prototype phase, that is heavily implementing a lot of machine learning exercises in terms of how the algorithm will work and how will the processes will take place and how will the machine talk to the actual manufacturing environment and how would the machine behave to this particular request. So there's a lot happening in this space at this stage.
Yeah, and for us as well, we see a lot in these machine learning happening in universities and research areas. And one of the examples I've seen before was with a 3D camera. It was sort of recognizing the parts that was being placed down in front of the robot. It's doing like a deburring kind of job. And you know, the camera was capable of, and plus the algorithm in the back, recognizing the shape and planning the path for the robot and to go through and polish and deburr the entire surface.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got I'm just conscious of the time as well. So we're supposed to be wrapping up about 10:30. Possibly might go a little bit longer. We've got a few more questions here. So next one, we might go to, could you talk about the IIoT tech application status in current Australia's OEM market? I hope I got that right. Yep. So I guess how we're finding the IIoT tech applications in the Australian OEM market.
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, acceptance of the technologies in the market. And at Balluff, we're certainly seeing, probably in the last 18 months, a big increase in demand for taking those first steps. So it depends on which markets and which customers you're talking to. A lot of the simple steps people have been doing for 20 years, didn't call it IIoT. But a lot of times people have got a very either a manual process or an established process that hasn't changed for a long time, and there's now a real demand to start to get visibility to get those increases in efficiency. And we're seeing that a lot recently, and we've definitely seen a change in the appetite to look at these implementations probably in the last year or 18 months.
Yeah, well,
Right.
there has been a lot of interest that we have seen in this space as well. Like a lot of customers are interested in implementing this IoT concept, and we have a lot of inquiries come through. And for example, I think we had this rig displayed at OSPAC earlier this year, back in March, and it has generated a lot of interest because customers have got a lot of data, but they don't know what to do with that data. So they really need to, they really like to automate. For example, they have got a lot of manual processes right now, and they want to move into this, automating that data using this IoT understanding of the concept. So this.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Yusuf, because a lot of the time when we talk about Internet of Things and Industry 4, we automatically go to automated processes. And a lot of the information to be gathered is around the manual inputs to that automated process, and where do we automate next? So if we can start to generate the data and build up a picture of the process, the manual processes that are around the automation, sometimes that's where the maximum value is to be gained.
That's right.
Thank you. Next question. There's a couple of questions in this one. How do we deal with the skills gaps in our workers? Great question. And who should we be training, and what skills and knowledge do they need? I'm assuming that's to operate Industry 4 machinery and to obviously have a collaborative approach between man-machine or woman-machine collaboration, I guess, from that sense. Yusuf, do you want to start?
Sure, no problems. I guess it is in relation to what has already been asked. I think it was question number 2 as to how do we start, for example, right? So it's in relation to that. So I would say understand your processes well, right? So for example, you will have some people that are working on the machine, right? They need to understand what the process is that they are trying to control or they're trying to monitor, right? So that will be a good starting point. Again, keep it very simple. Don't go into complex writing mathematical algorithms. Try to understand what the processes your machine currently have, and the people are key people who are involved on that particular side of that machine. Give them a better understanding of the processes and how they can understand the data well, basically, right? This is one part of the question. What was the other part, Joe?
Well, the other part was, who should we be training, and what skills and knowledge do they need?
Again, it all depends on the complexity of the project, I would say, right? So for example, if you want to do, again, if I look back at the power monitoring application we did, right? So there's no particular set of training required to that. So what you will have a couple of function blocks in your program, and you will have an app already on your phone, not an app, sorry, a web address that you can open and view the power monitoring of the machine. So again, you don't need a set skills of training for this, but again, if you want to complexify this sort of, this process, of course, there will be some sort of training required. So I would say it all depends on application by application as to what you want to achieve and what the processes will be.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess the last part of that question, so it's actually 3 questions in one question, really. So I think probably a more relevant one, do we need a data expert to interpret the data?
I don't believe so, again, because you would have an understanding of what the machine is doing and what the machine is capable of, right? There's no, like, it's not a rocket science because you have developed this machine, right? So you would know better than anyone else who has put this machine together. So you don't need a data scientist to come and tell you about the data and everything. So you just need to, again, understand the process as to what you would like to achieve and what you want to achieve and take it from there.
Excellent.
The question of who to educate about the technology, I guess, is an interesting one. At Balluff, we're doing a lot of work on twofold at the moment. We're doing a lot of work with the universities and the TAFEs about introducing the Industry 4 concepts. And we're doing, we have a course that we've run in the major cities throughout this year. It's been really well received in conjunction with the Australian Industry Group, where it's a very much a hands-on approach. So some theory about the the background of IIoT, starting from lean principles, and then go into real hands-on, build up a system, start to create a dashboard, start to see how you can capture this information that in a lot of cases is already there, and that's been really well received. That's really aimed more at the engineers and even sort of the higher CEO level, just to get an idea of how simple it is to really start to make steps with this. So, you know, from that question of who do we educate, I think it's a two-pronged approach. Firstly, absolutely the people working for you right now, but also the next generation. We're doing a lot of work with the, for the greater good, I suppose, with the universities and TAFEs.
Yes, sir, if you just want to add something to
Yeah,
that.
I just want to quickly add something to it. For example, that's a very good point, Jim, that you have mentioned. So Beckhoff has already taken this initiative with some of the universities and TAFE courses already in Victoria. So we are trying to bring the current generation up to speed with this IoT understanding. So when they go and get hired into a industry space, they already know what to look for. So it really simplifies and it really helps the industry to basically have people like these who are up and running. So rather than you investing them again to bring them up to the speed, they will already know what to look for and what to watch out for. So yeah, it's a good point that you mentioned, so yeah.
We have one more question,
Sure.
and we'll probably allow the time for one more question to take over here before we wrap up. It's a very relevant question, probably timely in follow-up to the last one, is have you partnered with any educational institutions, universities, to integrate IoT concepts in teaching and research?
Yes. So at the moment we're working with, for instance, TAFE SA, with Swinburne University, UTS up here in Sydney, on various different concepts and training platforms.
Also yes, but our R&D takes place in Germany, so we are partnering with 3 universities in Hamburg to implement this and test this.
Yeah. I guess the question, I mean, let me just add to that a little bit more, is the question before was actually quite relevant. Is that the right channel for education? Do we start, I mean, obviously, at universities and TAFEs, so, or perhaps should the workplaces be, you know, setting up an education space that they should be, you know, training their workers on, or reskilling or upskilling their workforce?
We also, as a company, we had this problem because how to approach the customers was, first you have all this data, then you go to the customer and say, now we have all this data, what do you want to do with it? And most customers said, we also don't know, we don't have a concept. So we kind of went back to our R&D center and we said, okay, we have to go to the customer and say, okay, this is what we have available. So we are now focusing, so first approach, focusing on algorithms that are close to the drive and that we can offer already. So we, instead of going to the customer and say, we have all these data available, we say, okay, we can give you an algorithm for oil temperature, so oil life, and we can give you an algorithm for bearing life, and you don't have to educate your people about it. You can give these information to your PLC or to any like visual device and just inform your people about it. So the know-how then comes from us, and you don't have to have this know-how internally. And I think this is the second approach you can go. So you don't have to educate the customer about it. You offer it as a service or as a part of your product.
Yeah, what we've done more is perhaps with other providers of IoT solutions that integrated to our robots and trying to make the dashboard as, you know, as you see the ones with here today, it's really done in a way that's very drag and drop and very graphical. So trying to make it as accessible for everyone as possible as well.
Sure. Just to answer your question, Joe. So we have partnered with Swinburne University, for example, back in Melbourne. So they got a lab called Advanced Manufacturing Lab, right? So if you are in Melbourne, please feel free to visit Swinburne University Advanced Manufacturing Lab. So you will see a lot of Beckhoff integration with Balluff and Node drives. So I'm not sure about Node, but definitely with Balluff, we've got a lot of our link connectivity happening. And also on Chisholm TAFE, we also have got some courses, and there's some training rigs that already have, they already got to run these IoT courses to train their students. And just to answer to one more question you had, Joe, as to would it be industry or would it be educational? So I guess it's a twofold question. And it all depends. For example, if you already have a set of amount of set people in the industry industry working, so you won't be sending them back to the university, right? So you will need to train them at the industry level. And then you will have fresh graduates coming out of university, which will also need to be equipped. So I guess training will be required on both fronts. Yeah. So this will, again, will leverage the efficiency that we will see moving forward.
And I guess on behalf of SMC, I can confidently speak that we actually have a dedicated team in Spain who've SMC Didactic, who actually develop training systems actively for TAFE universities and colleges across the world. And we've recently developed our SI 400, which is an Industry 4-based concept system, which is a modular concept system that demonstrates pretty much most aspects of Industry 4 capabilities, and they are available as we speak. So yes, we certainly try to partner and obviously lead by example, partner with the education institutes as well, and also our customers to develop their own educational systems within factories as well. So, and that's part of where that system was aimed for, not just education space, but also for upskilling the workforce of the future as well. So on that note, I would just like to extend a huge thank you for everybody's attention here and obviously for your attendance. And please give a round of applause to our panel as well. So a great effort. Thank you very much, gentlemen, as well, for answering, I think, answering all those questions quite efficiently and well thought through answers as well. So I couldn't thank you enough for that as well. So hopefully we've demonstrated in here that, I'm confident to speak, on behalf of all the companies represented over here, that there's a significant investment in R&D going on into obviously the products that we provide and offer to our customers, obviously to enable you to approach your design, thinking in terms of possibilities rather than design with limitations. So all your feedback is valued greatly, and obviously your attendance here as well. And we'll learn a lot from these interactions as much as you do, hopefully. So thank you once again. Please, if you want another coffee or something to eat, please stay for another chat as well. And thank you very much and hope to see you soon.